everybody.
Well, thanks, Kim, and thanks for having me here. That was a really nice introduction. I do appreciate those kind words. And because I oversee communications for a living, among other things, I really care about words, what we say, how we say it, who we say it to. I think the power of words can change people's perspectives and move people to action. And as powers go, that's a pretty good one. So that's why you'll hear me talk and be so excited about what I do for a living, because it is all about words. So I think you guys are controlling.
Yep.
So, okay, so when we think about the year 2020, there's a lot of words that we could describe what we've been through this last year. Some probably are not very appropriate for this for this conference or this meeting, right? If I'm being honest. But if I had to pick three, I think it's tragedy, resiliency, and growth. And I suspect that all of us have felt some version of these three in the past year. And I think it's part of the reasons why 2020 feels like it lasted for that year lasted for a decade. Even though we've taken a lot of good momentum into 2021, it just feels like we've kind of been stuck in this mode for longer than a year and a half. And there's not much fun in having to grieve tragedy or finding resilience under such tremendous pressure that I know a lot of people are under. It's not just comms people. It's not just in our industry. It's everywhere. So if you go to the next slide, I think it's that last word, growth, that can be a different story. It's hard to grow from experience. There's no question about that. But it's also deeply satisfying when you can look back and realize that you actually have. During the last year, I know that I've grown. Among other things, I was responsible for managing communications effort for the company, internally and externally around COVID. And it won't surprise many of you that pandemic crisis communications wasn't on my resume. In fact, it wasn't even in our crisis communications playbook. It is now, it wasn't then. So we didn't have a blueprint for it, nobody did. So when you talk about growth, I think a lot of us went through that. And if you go to the next slide, I think when you think about communication, it's probably one of the most fundamental basic elements in business. Heck, I would argue that a basic element is in communications is in marriage and friendship and in sports. But communicating during a pandemic is an entirely new meaning of purpose. Obviously, when you're talking about people, the well-being of people and life or death, so a whole new purpose. And so I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about what Magna did, and then I'll bridge into a few other things. But early on, probably like many of you in many of your roles, different things, we had a response, right? I can remember before March even hit, I can remember February 11th being the day that our Chinese operations were going to be coming back online because the OEMs were coming back online. And that date has stuck with me ever since, because I remember those moments in time very, very clearly. But that then led to us here in the US and rest of the world on March 15th to for the first time ever, communicate to our global workforce, salaried workforce, that we were going to remote work, something we had never done. March 18th, first time ever, we held our first virtual global-wide employee webcast. And then that was followed up by March 26th, we started to see our global facilities start to shut down like we've never, ever seen them before. So when you're talking about a crisis communications, everything was happening so quickly, and there were a lot of firsts. Well, at the same time, and you can go to the next slide, at the same time we're dealing with all of this unknown, Magna started to get some negative feedback, something we don't typically get. But we were starting to see that trending on social quite regularly, probably because we were deemed an essential employer. And so we had, especially in Canada, we had employees working, and we were getting hit so hard by everybody saying we didn't care about our employees. We weren't thinking about them first. people were actually pinging me on social directly, like as you know, for me to get the company to tell the operations to shut down. So really, we started to see a crisis within a crisis emerging, and went into what I would consider a full court press. And so if you go to the next one, what we did is started mining for some stories where we could help flip the narrative. And what we did was uncover that Magna was actually one of many companies, probably like many of yours, that went into PPE mode, right? We started making masks and gowns, and we were helping on the ventilators with GM and Ford. And then we got a nugget. We got a Puro, a product that our company was trying to launch a couple of years ago for sports equipment, where, you know, if you've got hockey players or you got soccer players, the smell and the odor and the germs, they're hard to get rid of, right? But you can stick them in this box and you can zap that away and you're good to go. Well, it turned out that it was good for the COVID virus too. And so as front lines were dealing with lack of gowns and masks and things in the hospital, we had something that could help. And so we were able to see just in a few days how we could flip the narrative. And then we never looked back. We never looked back on that. And that's because if you go to the next slide, we started to do what we do best. We were telling stories. We were collecting stories from our employees around the world, and they were coming in hundreds. I mean, I always knew we had it in us. I knew that other companies did. I knew people did, but it really restored faith in humanity for me to see everybody pitching in and doing these. And then that's what you started to see in the headlines, and that's what you started to see stories. And I can remember talking to a few reporters a few weeks after that said, you know, we're kind of off the PPE story now. Tell us something different. Like there was so much coming in, but they wanted something different, and we didn't. And so we just kept telling that story internally, because we also started to see how it was helping morale and boosting morale in a time that it was desperately needed. We also did some weekly leadership touch points in a crisis. If you've ever had to deal with one, you have to hear from your leadership, and you have to hear from them fast, and you have to hear from them often. And so we would do these monthly touch point meetings with our executives, and we would cover topics that range from what our CEO, how he was managing a company in a new virtual world, or how this was different from the 2000 crisis, and how we were different, and how we're positioned differently to come out of it. And so we picked different topics to not be redundant, and we kept pushing those every week for months to keep information out. And we did it in written form, in video, and social, because we know people consume their information in different ways. The other thing is we had to just keep updates coming, right? Health and wellness has become a huge topic of late, because it is probably what I think is going to be the most trickle-down effect of the pandemic, is going to be mental health and the health and wellness going forward of our employee base. We also found that it was important for people to give kudos to each other and visibly do that through some of our channels. And then we had the restart communications that was absolutely huge for us and many others. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see that our Smart Start playbook was absolutely a game changer. And although we had we had the information, we have a health and safety group that I think is one of the best in the business, and they had a lot of information, but it was scattered everywhere. And again, in a crisis, you got to have things at your fingertips, and they have to be simple. But I have to say, putting together the Smart Start playbook, and we did this with a team of people, obviously it wasn't just me or my team, it was a collection of a bunch of experts. It was really the first time that I had seen in all my years of being in the industry where the industry actually came together. We were on calls with OESA and our customers and all suppliers, and we all were talking about how are we going to handle this restart together. And so that made it a little bit easier for us to do the playbook. And I think that our industry set the benchmark for other industries when it came to starting up all these facilities that went down immediately. And so I want to transition from the pandemic now to the CEO transition. You mentioned, Kim, that yes, while we were dealing with, I think when Kim called me, we were going through the pandemic, but I had just got tasked with, oh, we're going to have a CEO change. Don Walker, after 33 years, is going to retire. And Swami Kotagiri, who was our CTO, was going to be named on January 1st. And, you know, it was the biggest announcement I think Magna had ever done. And I remember thinking to myself, holy cow, I don't even know where to start. I'm still dealing with a pandemic that I've never been through before. And now I'm doing a CEO transition that I had never done before. But things kind of have a way of working themselves out if you don't panic. And I didn't panic. Long days, long nights, lots of headaches. And I wouldn't, you know, I probably learned a lot more than anything, but we got through it. And if you go to the next slide, I think I'd have to say that over that period of time, my role and my team's importance in the company grew in so many ways. And I think you could really feel and see that. And it was one of the most important periods of my professional life, because it turns out that wisdom gets made the same way diamonds do, under intense amount of pressure. And that's, I just can't say it any other way. And when I talk about pressure, if you go to the next slide, you know, you're dealing with the pandemic still, you're dealing with the CEO transition, and Magna's Magna, so we don't slow down, right? We're making announcements with Fisker, and then we make a huge one with LG right before Christmas, and then we're gearing up for our CEO's first 100 days. And so many of my team members are on the line today. I wish you could see them all so that they could wave, because they're simply the best. The marketing, there's some marketing folks on here too that none of this would be possible without the execution from them. And so I can't thank them enough. I think we've got just an outstanding team, and they got us through a lot of things. And I guess for one thing's for sure, Magna is not slowing down, and for all of my team members, neither are their responsibilities. So we're going to keep buckling down and getting to work here. So thank you. And so when I look back at the year, the life-changing situations, and for some tragedy that was endured, and all the resiliency that was required, I try to remind myself about how many people there are like me, like us, who were able to grow during this period, who were forced to push themselves beyond the limits of what you believed possible, and who proved to themselves, I put me in that as well, that we could deliver. And so if you go to the next one, again, my global team is full of people who had that experience. The automotive industry is full of people who have that experience. And so I say this, we may have cut production of cars in 2020, but I think in the end, we increased production of wisdom. And that makes me so hopeful for the years to come, especially for an industry which we all know and love. And I've been in this industry 20 years. I actually thought I was going to be a sports commentator when I went into communications. And although I love sports, I can't envision myself being in any other industry. I truly, truly do love it. And I can't wait to see what's next. And so I thought I would just end with a couple of more slides here. If you want to go to the next slide there, that just is, you know, I've learned from a lot of great people. I'm still learning from a lot of great people. But I thought I would maybe share and switch to you about some things that are a little bit more personal to me, and maybe talk about some advice that I would give my younger self, and then some advice that I've learned along the way that I keep using it in hopes that it might help some of you. It might not be typical, but again, it's kind of how I roll. So let's get with the first one here. So the first one is, if I were 26 and I could tell my 26-year-old self anything, I would tell her to carry over confidence. And I guess give me just a minute to explain what that means. When I was 26, I worked for General Motors. I was invited to a leadership conference, a big leadership conference. Mostly men were there, right? There were, I don't even think there were maybe 3 women that were there. During that meeting, they put random stickers on some chairs at each table, and they put a basketball on each table too. And if you had the sticker on your chair, you were asked to come to the stage with the basketball. And I was the lucky one, which I was pretty excited about, because no matter what they were going to ask me to do with that ball, I knew I was going to be able to do it. For those of you that don't know me on the line here, I actually played college ball. It was part of my livelihood for so long. And so go up to the stage with a bunch of men with a basketball, I was fine. As luck would have it, they asked us to they gave us a challenge, and if you could spin the ball on your finger, you actually won a signed basketball from Nancy Lieberman Klein. And you know, I can tell you, I still have this basketball, so you know I won the challenge, because none of the guys could spin the basketball on their finger. And I was cocky at the time. I was 26 years old. I asked, what finger do you want me to spin it on? I mean, they had guys that couldn't even do it on one, and I asked, which finger you want me to do it on? And of course I did it and won the basketball. But the point being is that I was so confident without even knowing what they were going to ask me to do. But because it had to do with basketball and many hours and of practice and prep and honing my skill, I knew I could do it. So a few years later, I kept wondering, like, how do you get that confidence? How do you carry that confidence over? And I just kept convincing myself that if I take that same, if I want to do that, have that same kind of confidence in everything I do, that I had to keep preparing, I had to keep practicing, I had to keep honing my skill. And I carried that over years later and really honed in on my craft as a communicator. So now if you go to the next slide and you talk to my 36-year-old self, I'm gonna put my basketball down, because when it's in my hands, I want to do a lot with it, because I love it. If I go to my 36-year-old self, I would say to trust yourself more. That was about the time I joined Magna, and there was no communications department. There was no PR department. Our investor relations team was running our external communications. So I'll leave you with that. You know how that was probably going. And if I had a dime for every time someone said, we can't do that, or we don't do that, or we've never done that, I'd probably be really rich right now. But it was a few years after that I just started to trust my gut more, and trust in me and my experience, my education. And that really led, and Kim, you mentioned a couple other things, that led me to creating many firsts for not only me, but for Magna, a global PR team that was from the ground up. I had never done it before, but I built one from the ground up, and now we're the full service comms department. We eliminated 110 intranet sites so that we could have one global site. And in a decentralized company, that's pretty hard to do. We implemented a global TV communications platform around the world so that we could share instant communications. We built a social media strategy and launched on various programs. And trust me, that was like probably 8, maybe 7 years ago, when the executive team was like, what are you talking about? Social is just social. And it was really hard. And I think we asked for forgiveness a lot. Rhonda McNally's I'll talk about her in a little bit, but her and I have gotten in a lot of trouble over the social media part, but it was all for the right reasons, and it's all for the good of the company. And I think more importantly was the Employee Global app that we just recently put in. And when you think about all of these internal channels that we had and we've done over the years, I think the executive team would say, yeah, that's real. Those are really nice to have. I got excited when they would actually say the words in some employee meetings to make sure you check out our app and make sure you check out the internet. It would get me all excited. But really, when the pandemic hit, I think our executives knew the value and the return on investment for all of these channels, because they saw firsthand how each one of these things could impact what we were doing. So if you go to the next slide, in fact, it was our global intranet site that became our hub for all things COVID. That's where we had our dynamic playbook put, and our employee app. Because we had that in place, we were able to integrate the mandatory health screening tool that all of our employees have to do before they go into any of our facilities. And so we jumped from, I don't know, 25, 35, 40,000. And then in a matter of weeks, we went to 114,000 to 177,000 employees on our employee app. And so when you talk about a return on investment, you're hitting it right where the executives like to see it, right? That it is there and people are using it, and there's ways that you can use it in other means that you never thought possible. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to finish up here real quickly by just giving you some quick hitters of what I would give my advice to myself these days. And I still give them to myself. And I think the first one is don't wait to be invited to the table. I hear this all the time, and it really drives me nuts that I wasn't invited, or I'm waiting for an invitation. I'm telling you, don't wait. Pull up your chair and get to work. And I know that sounds easier said than done, but I'm telling you, I've been the champion for employee meetings for Magna for so many years. And I would do the script writing, I would do the planning, I would do the prepping, I would do everything. And then I would be behind the camera or off stage. And a few years ago, I thought to myself, and this is a very true story. A few years ago, I thought, wait a minute, I set the agenda for these things. I set it. I set the agenda. I have a voice. I have a position in this company. I'm putting myself on the agenda. And I did, and nobody ever questioned it. And so I just kept doing it, and I kept doing it. And then those things led to other things, and I didn't wait. And then I think it was recently, about a year ago, I think it was Swami, and I said, I'm not sure if you noticed, but I put myself and my team on these agendas to talk about. I think it's really important. And he says, no, I'm fine with it. And I said, okay. So that was kind of the only time I kind of just asked if it was okay, but I had already been doing it for so long, it didn't matter. And then another quick hitter to me, and we've got two, if you go to the next slide, is, and I actually stole this from somebody, a female leader that I had met a few years ago, and she talked about having your own personal board of directors, a handful of people that you can trust and turn to for advice and guidance, and maybe just to be a good listener. Since then, I think it's been maybe 4 years since then, I've had my own personal board in place. And it's not something it's literal, and it's not something you actually talk about, but it's people that you can turn to about anything. And the first is Shelley Otenbaker, who is on the call today. There's two out of the 5 of mine that are on the call today. And Shelley could tell you stories. She won't, because she really likes me, but we played ball against each other in college. We have a professional relationship because of the agency that she worked with, but she's also been my assistant coach for many, many years. And so she's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of me. But Shelley, I'm telling you, I can pick up the phone anytime, and I do, and I ask her for advice. She's a dear friend of mine, dear colleague. I've tried to get her to come work for me for years. She's trying the entrepreneurial thing, and she knows I say this all the time. She's doing great with it, but she is somebody I'll call all the time. And then Rhonda McNally, also on the line, is Vice President of Marketing for Magna. We get in a lot of trouble together. There's not anything we don't do together. And you got to have somebody like that at work. She talks me off the cliff a lot. I talk her off too. Should I send this email? Should I say it like this? What should I do? And we talk about personal things as well. And you just have to have those sanity check people. So I strongly encourage you to have that personal board. Keep them there. The only way you're going to grow is if you have a good team around you to do that. And I'm not talking team that you work with. I'm talking about your personal board that has vested interest in seeing you do well is key. The third example is, I would say, embrace the challenge. I know things seem daunting. I know we never have enough staff or resources. And I know there's a million reasons why we can't embrace all challenges, but I'm telling you, it's better to embrace them than run from it. And that's how you really start to grow. And if you click one more time, and I truly believe this, because if you have to understand, the best way to stay in first is to run like you're in second. And anybody that runs or competes, you know what that means. It's a totally different feeling when you're running like you're in second place and you're trying to catch somebody, because you can't stay in first and stay complacent. And that's what you do. And just a shout out, because I am a mom of three, that girl in the lead pack there is my daughter, my oldest daughter, who is a heck of a runner. And I have to get my kids in somewhere on my presentation. So that is my oldest there. Yeah. So if you go to the last one, and this is my last slide, I think, is make noise for yourself. We don't often do that. We don't know what to say. We don't know how to say it. We don't want to come off wrong. We don't want to be perceived wrong, but do it. You own your own brand. So you're the one responsible for it. So why not tell people what you do? Talk about your accomplishments, talk about what makes you proud. But I'll end with this. Just be very careful sometimes. This is a real picture that I'm sharing with you. Unfortunately, it's my cousin's son who graduated and got a gentleman's award. And he's holding his gentleman's award in front of, well, you can see something that's probably not so gentleman-like, right? And he probably didn't even understand it. So own your brand, know what you're putting out there, make noise for yourself. I love that he got a gentleman's award. I think he didn't do himself any justice by doing it in front of that picture. So I think with that, Kim, I think I'm just about at time, and I thank you for having me today. I know I talk a lot, I talk fast, and I'm always energized to talk communications, but thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for all the great information. I think I have like 3 pages of notes. So at this time, if you have a question for Tracy, pipe up. Don't go ahead and unmute yourself and pipe up and ask, because what a golden opportunity to ask somebody who's been through a lot in the last 12 months, not even. And Jane, you have everybody unmuted, I'm going to say, who wants to be. I would assume so. Well, I'll ask a question. Do you ever wish for a day that would be non-newsworthy? And what would you do with that day?
Wow, that's a great question. I do often wish for days that would just slow down, because I often feel that we move so fast that I miss opportunity for other things, and that's personally and professionally. So I do really wish that it would slow down. I don't know that my personality would let me slow it down to do absolutely nothing, but I would probably work out more. I've got 2 kids in college right now, and I see them when they race, but I can't see them otherwise. So I would probably work out more and try to travel more.
Great, super. I know there's 31 other people out there. Chime in.
Hi, Kim. This is Jane. I wanted to ask Tracy, I know that this is quite a burden. You've probably put in several hours a day, but how do you keep your spirits up personally?
Oh, that is a good question. I don't know. I'm always the glass half full type of person. I've always kind of been that way. I don't really surround myself with a lot of negativity or a lot of negative people. But I can tell you, there's days where they're bad. They're real bad. You know, I just told my husband a couple of days ago, I said, I'm kind of anxious for this week to be over with. And he said, don't you say that every week? And I said, yes, I do. But then, you know what? Something great happens, right? We get a good story in, or the CEO knocks it out of the park, or our stock price yesterday went to $99. $99. I mean, I joined this company, what, 16 years ago. It was not that. I mean, I think so it has not been close. So I see those kinds of things, and it makes me realize what I do has a purpose. And so I I do try to stay positive. I don't think that's fake. I think my team would tell you that I'm always thinking, I'm always like, which is a bad thing for them, because I'm always coming in and I say, I got an idea. And they say, no, we do not want to hear it. You got to hold that idea, because they know they got to help execute it. But I think being positive and just having a lot of energy has really helped me. It's worked for me. And so I'm just going to keep being that way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Tracy. This is Sherry Muir-Irwin. I'm a member of the board of AWF as well. And thank you, first of all, for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and experience with us tonight. Kind of a little bit of related to what we've been talking about now. I would be very interested to hear if you've got some just rules of the road, things that you always look for when you're having to communicate difficult information and negative news, if you will. And of course, the last year has been full of that. But how do you do that in such a way as to try and continue to keep the troops, the momentum and people's minds more on a positive note than a negative? Are there any just rules that you go by when you're communicating those tough pieces of information to your organization?
I wouldn't say rules, but as a communicator, I think we all follow it. You have to tell the truth, right? No matter how bad it is, you have to tell the truth, and you have to be responsive with it. And those are the two biggest things that especially from an external communications piece of it, because if we let somebody else tell our story for us, it's much harder work. The damage control is much harder. So I'd rather give the difficult news. And we've had to do that, right? I mean, we've had to let people go. We've had to downsize. We've had deaths in our facilities due to COVID or other things, right? And so we've delivered some terrible, terrible news, but I think our employees have always appreciated that we try to tell them fast, and we try to tell them the most accurate thing we can and not try to sugarcoat it. And so those are kind of the rules that I live by with anything I do. And I know that sounds so simple, but that really is. I just was on a call yesterday, and we have a situation with a facility that's happening, and they were like, well, and of course there was a bunch of legal people, there was security on, and there's HR, and then there's the comms person, right? And so they're like, well, how do we tell, who do we contact, and how do we tell the story? And they were like, well, Tracy, you tell us how we should do this, because of what's the impact going to be externally. And I said, no. What we have to come out with the truth, right? We have to come out with the story first, and then we'll figure out how we tell it. Then we'll figure out how we pick up the pieces, and then how we move it from there. But first and foremost, we've got to be open. We got to be transparent about this, and and deal with what happens. And so that just happened a couple of days ago. So that I guess those would kind of be my unwritten rules.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I know you already mentioned, I think, a very key element is having your leader up front on a consistent and regular basis communicating with the troops.
You have to be, and especially for us, we have a CEO change, and I think his biggest challenge is winning the hearts and minds of employees. When we had Don Walker 33 years with the company, and so he has to be the face of the company. He has to do it. And he says, and I shouldn't say this because this is public, but he says, I'm not, I write speeches for him, and he says, I can't be salesy. I'm an engineer. And I said, you are our biggest salesperson. You have to be salesy. That is, and so he's come a long way, but he's an engineer. So it's, you got to know who you're dealing with.
Yeah, he's got a challenge right out of the gate. Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry.
Somebody else want to?
Hey, Tracy, it's Shelley. Hi, thank you for the shout out.
Next question.
Come on, I have a few though. So as a fellow communicator, and I work with other companies, a lot of times when they get new leadership, they're like, let's give them, they call it whatever, the 90-day or the 100-day, like, let's give them 100 days to get set before we roll them out in front of media and whatnot. And you guys came out ablazing with Swami. So like, talk about that strategy. And, you know, so many people are so conservative, and like, why did you choose not to be? And just talk about the strategy a little bit.
Well, Shelley, as I told you, I've never done a CEO transition before. So we didn't know. I just knew that, you know, we wanted to control the message. So we wanted to make sure, first and foremost, that Don was retiring on his own terms. And that was very important. And you can't tell that story unless you tell that story. And so that was very important for us to make sure that the messaging was he was going out on his own terms and really introduce to the market, our customers and our employees, who Swami was. You know, he's been with the company for 21 years, and he's drove most of the strategy. So that first one hit, you're right. It was, we were everywhere. His second day on the job, we had him with Phil LeBeau with CNBC. We had him with Cheddar. We had him with Fox News. He was everywhere. But we had a good story to tell, right? Magna's repositioning itself in this new mobility landscape. So people want to hear from us on what we're doing. So we had the Fisker announcement, and we had the LG announcement. So those kinds of things played in our favor because they all wanted to talk about those things. So it gave us a prime opportunity to not just say, hey, we've got a new CEO, but we're making some key changes too. And so it was a first 100-day strategy. It has gone beyond 100 days. As I said today, we just did some key employee meetings, and we're going to keep doing it because now I think the market knows him. The customers certainly don't. Now we're switching to, can we really get the employees to really embrace what he's saying and how he's leading? Long answer, but I'm glad you noticed, Shelley, because we've done a lot.
It definitely, well, you know, I had the chance to work with Swami for a little stint, so enjoyed working with him. So it was good to see him out and about.
Yeah,
sure.
He's changed. He's come a long way.
What do you think your biggest challenge has been in, I guess, transforming a leader from being technical to salesy, I'll call it. But I mean, it's very difficult to change who you are, right? I mean, you can change a little bit, but most of the time you always revert back to what you're comfortable with. And I myself have watched him from the get-go to now, and the interviews and things like that. And what a remarkable difference. But again, I mean, it goes from everything, right? It goes from look, dress, talk, presence, the whole shebang. So what was the biggest challenge?
Yeah, he made sure to tell me many times, and Rhonda from our marketing team knows this as well, that he won't change, that he is who he is and he won't change. But he also realizes that he needs to speak differently. He's an engineer, and so we even have him tell people that he's a tech geek. I mean, he's a geek, and that's what he is, and he owns that, and we own that in his messaging for him. I think the biggest challenge for him was he could buy into the messaging and the positioning and the interviews and all that, like that. He could buy into that. But when I said to him, you're gonna have to have a social presence, he was like, no way, I'm not gonna do it. And I'm like, you can't be a CEO of a $40 billion company and not do it. And so that's been the biggest tug of war with him, I think. But he's on LinkedIn, he's on Twitter, and he's doing pretty good with it. But that, I would say, is just a whole new ball game for him. So
that's amazing. Anybody else have a question for Tracy?
Hi, Tracy. Yeah, I do. It's Mary Kipfer. Back to the common topic of communication. When your organization isn't ideally communicating from the top down, and you're a people leader in middle management, and there's a lot of changes going on, but I'm going to say the communication is not ideal, but it's affecting a lot of people all the way down the chain. As a middle manager and as a people leader, How do you best manage that? What's your best advice for that?
And, and I don't know that I have the best advice, but I can tell you it's something that we are talking about. Like, that has become one of Swami's number one focus, because that layer that you're talking about right there for us, they get the access to employees that we don't get. And so whatever they're hearing or whatever they're saying, they're communicating. And so if we don't train them right or communicate with them on a regular basis, what's going to our employee base can be tough, right? And I'm talking about things like how to be an empathetic leader. What's the company stand for? What's our go forward strategy? If they don't know any of that, that's a problem, because they are front lines to our employee base. We have 60,000 salary that I can reach with everything. I can reach them through email, cell phones. They've got laptops, but I've got 100,000 employees that I can't. And the people that they see most is that middle manager, is that supervisor. And so Swami's asked us to take a look at it to see where we can do these learning and learning sessions and webinar sessions where they can jump on and hear from other leaders on how they're tackling a problem. But I don't have good advice for you on that one, Mary, because we are struggling with it. And it's something that in Swami's new role, he's really pushing us to take a look at.
Thanks, Tracy.
All right, how about one more question? Go for it.
Hi, Tracy, my name is Kelly Chappa. I have a question about technology, and it kind of rolls into the past few things that you've been doing, but what technologies have you, let's say, thought about or implemented that you think are making a difference or helping, or ones that you're looking at for the future that you find interesting that can help you do your communications job?
Yeah, it's probably not new to some people on the line because I think other companies are doing it, but we just launched podcasts, leadership podcasts. And our first one was with Swami Kodagiri talking about his love for books. So we didn't want him to talk about the business. We didn't want him, wanted him to talk about your love for books. And then we did another one with Misty Rice, who's on the call today. And if you haven't met Misty, she is a phenomenal person. Started college at 16, has adopted, her and her wife have adopted 4 young Black kids. I mean, you can't get more diverse than Misty in her background. And we did a podcast on that. And so that technology of a podcast is not new by any means, but it's definitely a new channel for us. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback on people wanting to know about people that they work with. And so we're starting to do that just a little bit more. And then everything's social, right? We've got a social team that just keeps on bringing us great ideas at how to target our customers for different things, how to help how to reach employees in the plant with information that we can't get to them through other means. So I would say we've embraced social more than we have in the past, podcasts. And then we have not, I think we've just scratched the surface with our employee app. We launched it 2 years ago. I don't think we've got to the full potential of that and how powerful that tool can be just yet. It's fairly new. We've got a lot of improvements to make on it, and I think that's going to help us a ton when we talk about enhancing our communications. I will tell you though, the one thing that was revolutionary for us a couple of years ago was using Slido or social QA. If your organizations don't use that, I can tell you, if you don't use Slido or you don't use social QA, we found that Slido was better in your all people meetings or in any of your meetings. Check it out. Our employees have embraced it. Our leaders have embraced it. And it's a really great way to increase engagement in employee meetings.
Thank you. Speaking of Misty, hey Misty, can you pop out for a second onto the screen and say hi to everybody? Misty.
It takes her 3 times to get off mute and put her camera on. She's in meetings with us daily and we tease her about this all the time.
I'm not sure she's here.
Oh, she was.
Oh,
Bummer. Anyways, there is a big shout out to Misty though, because she was so kind to help coordinate everything. to get you to say yes. And then also a shout out to Tom for pushing AWAF to really think about the communications aspect of and all the things that you guys have done. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Misty. Thank you, Tracy, for being so genuine and it's just so personal. And you don't see that too often in some of the leaders out there today. And I think that's missing, the empathy and the personalism and the ability to make somebody laugh. So I really, really don't change.
I won't. And thank you for having me. And anyone that I'm not connected with on LinkedIn, please feel free to reach out to me. Call me, text me, email me. I'm happy to answer any questions after this as well.
Super, super. Well, thank you so much. And you are welcome to stay on for another 30 minutes. No worries. So we're going to kind of move forward. And we have a great scholarship team who has basically been instrumental in getting AWAF close to the $500,000 mark in awarding scholarships, probably close to almost 200 women since we started the process. So I'd like to introduce Jane Bishop, who you talk about relationships. She and I have been friends since 1985, and neither one of us have gray hairs.
You're not real.
I know. Anyways, Jane Bishop, take it away.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Tracy. You're very inspirational. And we have two of our scholarship recipients that we're going to be announcing. And they're online here. So hopefully you can just stay for at least another 5 minutes so you can hear what we've got. And then you're free to go if you'd like. But
I'm staying on. I can't wait to see these first.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, and for a lot of folks that may not know, the scholarships truly are the root of the organization, because we're here to make sure that there are females going forward that want to pursue a passion for this industry, automotive and mobility. And so as far as the scholarship committee, we're usually doing this a few times a year where we have our deadlines and we go through a process of selecting our candidates. And we can't do it without the help of our sponsors. So I would like to first introduce Rachel Che. She is a recipient of a $2,500 scholarship from Magna International. And Rachel, she is a high school student and she's a senior and she goes to school in Clifton, Virginia. And she will be attending Brown University, which is in Providence, Rhode Island. She's going to be studying computer engineering and materials engineering. And as an artist, a nature enthusiast, and an aspiring engineer, she wants to design sustainable and environmentally friendly vehicles for the future. In high school, she worked on a research project to transform the food scraps into textiles by designing a fiber extraction process to test the durability of pineapple leaf fibers. She wrote the research paper and won first place in the Fairfax County Regional Science Fair. Now, there's a lot of noise that I would love to promote about Rachel. She's got, you'll be able to see it on her website bio, but I'm just going to give you some more highlights. But I'm not even sharing everything. These achievements include the Gold Junior Leadership Award by the National Association for Korean Schools, Engineer Girl Ambassador of the National Academy of Engineering, President of Women in Math Society Club, co-founder of Engineer Girl Steamers Program, and board member of Kids Are Scientists Too. And Rachel Che lives in Centerville, Virginia. So I'd like Rachel to unmute yourself and please introduce yourself and say what you would like to say.
Hi, thank you for introducing me. I'm Rachel Che. I first want to thank Magna International and AWAF for giving me this opportunity for the scholarship. I'm grateful that I'm not only able to help lift this financial burden of going to college, but I'm also so relieved to be continuing my journey in engineering in college, knowing that I have like a community of amazing ladies and professional engineers and mentors that I can rely on when I need help. So yeah, and I'm really excited for the mentorship program as well. I'm excited to learn about leadership and how I can become a better leader and seek for new opportunities. So yeah, I want to thank you for picking me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Rachel. And so with that,
Jane, can I just join? Can I just? So I'm part of the Magna team that looks at all the submissions, and we saw Rachel's, and I couldn't. I mean, I can't even say it, Rachel. The only thing I can say is, you have to come internship at Magna. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that because of compliance here, but Rachel, you know how to reach us, so. Congratulations. I mean, geez, well accomplished and so young already. And I think you're paving the way for a lot. So congrats.
Thank you so much.
yeah, yeah. And that's the beauty of this program. We have no idea, except for what we read on paper about our students that are filling out those applications. And sometimes it's overwhelmingly tough, but it's also overwhelmingly assuring that the next generation is going to continue the progress that we're making in the automotive mobility. So with that, I'm going to ask Ashley Camley, she's also scholarship co-chair, to go ahead and announce the next recipient.
Thanks, Jane, and hi, everyone. Ashley Camley, as Jane said, and echo everything Jane just said. It's so inspiring to read the scholarships that come through. We truly have the best position on the board to read about these amazing women. So we'll start off with announcing the next scholarship, and it's going to Ashley Jones, is receiving a $2,500 scholarship provided by Maureen LaFontaine Legacy Scholarship. Excuse me. Ashley is a sophomore studying mechanical engineering and transferring from Schoolcraft College to Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, while in high school, Ashley attended classes related to engineering and the Ford High School Science and Technology program for 2 years, which included a summer internship where she assisted in translating specifications to ensure export vehicles met Chinese requirements. She also participated in the Wayne State University Biomedical Engineering Camp and was a member of First Robotics Club. Ashley's short-term goal is an internship towards her future career aspirations in product development or environmental engineering to improve fuel economy and reduce emissions. So if anyone's looking for a stellar intern, let us know. We have another one. Ashley has won numerous scholarships, including the Ford Blue Oval STEM, American Association of Blacks in Energy, Schoolcraft College, and Wayne State University. She works part-time to offset her school expenses and volunteers at a local church. Her hometown is Livonia, Michigan. And we have Ashley here as well. She'd like to jump on and say a few words.
Hi, so I'm Ashley. I actually, a couple days ago, I found out that I won another scholarship. So I'm really happy about that too.
That's great.
Congrats.
So I'm really happy to be here in my kitchen to accept this scholarship. It's an honor to be awarded a scholarship in the name of Maureen LaFontaine. I read about her lifetime story, and I admire her determination and great success in a typically male-run industry. I also admire her contributions to her community, and this scholarship is especially meaningful to me because I've always loved cars. Sorry, I'm nervous. And I love cars so much that I wanted to be a mechanic when I was younger. So yeah. And then to know that I have the support of an organization like the Automotive Women's Alliance in my pursuit of my engineering degree, it makes me feel encouraged, definitely. In addition to the financial award, I am also excited about the opportunity to be matched with a mentor over the next year. And thank you again for the award. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yay.
Great job, Ashley.
Thanks.
Same goes for you too, Ashley. You know, Magna has a lot of students come in for internships, so I'm just going to throw it out there again.
Well, thank you, Jane, and thank you, Ashley. In fact, I have a really good news story, and that is Tom helped me get one of my mentees through the AWA mentoring program into Magna, and she's actually going to be doing an internship, and she's so
Wow.
excited, and she lives in Florida.
Wow.
So, but she's coming up to Michigan. So just another success story. So Magna, wow, we're like just blessing you with all these fabulous women. So it's all good. So I wanted to just highlight on a couple more things here. We have a tremendous coaching program that is going to be kicking off this fall. And you can contact Suzanne Cordes-Holterhoff or myself. It's the ability for you to get matched up with a coach for 6 sessions for $150. And I don't know where you can do that, but the coaches are all accredited, and it's a wonderful program. In addition to that, we have the mentoring program, which Ashley was so kind to mention, and so was, I think, Rachel. And that's going to be kicking off very soon also, so don't forget about that. A couple other things that we have going on, just so you know. Believe it or not, we have a lot of stuff going on. We have Lunch and Learn on May 20th. We have a rooftop social on June 10th. It's like our first in-person event in like a year and a half. We're also going to have a summer barbecue on the back side of someone's house on their patio, and then we'll have one of those barbecue trucks. But we're going to actually have the speaker address the group virtually because she can't travel. It's Elizabeth Umberson from ZF. And so that's really, really great. August 27th, everybody needs to sign up for that golf outing. And if you don't golf, it doesn't really matter because it's 9, wine, and dine. So you can come and wine and dine and participate in the auction with us. October, this is a great event, and hopefully by then we'll be able to meet and greet in person. But we have Pumps and Power, which is our annual signature event, and that is Lottie Holland, who's the head of diversity for Stellantis, and she's so excited. And then finally in December, we're going to close out the year with something extremely different. Never done this before, but Lily Epstein Statland, who is president and CEO of Vesco Oil, is going to address the group. And I'm hoping that we can go to some type of a venue and enjoy her presentation. So now I thought I'd turn it over to Kelly and see if Kelly has anything to update the group with regard to AWA and where we're moving.
Sure. No, I just wanted to say thank you again to Magna and your sponsorships. And there's so many of you on the call today. It's really exciting to see how you guys have been supporting us for a long time. And we're starting to get a little further engagement with some of your employees. And this is one of the questions that I didn't give to Tracy, but you can talk to Misty afterwards. But Misty Rice is leading our ad hoc committee investigating what we might do for helping women to be aware of and get themselves prepared for paid corporate board positions towards the end of their career when they've, had more experience. So it's really nice that as we're offering something to advance and empower women in automotive, it's starting, with scholarships as they enter their career. Then it's professional development and classes like the one that Kim mentioned that's coming up. We have one on business agility and using an agile approach, through to coaching, which Kim mentioned, which you can get $2,000-$3,000 worth of coaching for $150. And so now we're thinking, okay, what could that next thing be? So Misty's leading that. And then also Shamika Ward from Magna is leading our ad hoc committee on diversity and inclusion. And so with the climate that we're in, we want to make sure that we are doing what we can do to be relevant and to be mindful of diversity and inclusion. So she is leading the charge on that and doing a really great job. We've already written a draft of our diversity and inclusion statement. So we're on a journey there too.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess I just wanted to say thank you again, Tracy, for speaking. And it's just exciting to see all of the things that are happening. I knew there was one more point, and this is it. I was going to thank Tom Apostolos too, because I heard 2 scholarship recipients say that they were excited for the mentorship program. And that is relatively new for us. We've only been doing it for maybe 4 or 5 years. And Tom, in one of our executive advisory committee meetings, had said, "How are you guys closing the loop? Are you throwing money over a wall, or are you, how could you help them?" So we established this mentoring program. It's been very successful, and every year a higher and higher percentage of the recipients take advantage of it. So ladies who receive scholarships, we're